The FBI and Justice Department under fire from the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Chuck Grassley says, quote, highly credible whistleblowers told his office there was an effort within the FBI to downplay negative information on Hunter Biden ahead of the 2020 election. Grassley is now demanding both Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray answer the allegations. Earlier today, I spoke with Senator Chuck Grassley about these latest developments. Senator, nice to talk to you, sir.
I'm glad to be with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Senator, I have read that you have had whistleblowers come forward to you about Hunter Biden and the Justice Department. What are you being told?
I think that we're investigating that because we have had ample evidence that there's something wrong when you get money from Chinese business people and get amounts of money like $500 and then $5 million, and then stipends of $100,000 a month for a long period of time. And those people are connected with Chinese energy companies, and those people in turn then have connection to the military. I think we've got several things here at stake. Is this foreign representation? So they ought to register under FARA. Is there any chance that there's any compromise of American national security in regard to China? I don't know that there is, but I think when you have these high-level people in American government dealing with people like that in China, it raises a legitimate question.
Do you have any reason to believe that the Department of Justice, for instance, is not vigorously looking into whether Hunter Biden has any other criminal problems, like whether or not he has any tax problems or whether he's made any false statements? Are they dragging their feet in any way? Do you have any information the Justice Department isn't doing its job?
I hope they're doing their job. They ought to be doing it in a non-political way. But there's several disturbing things, like, for instance, they've had the laptop since for 2 or 3 years. We haven't heard anything that they're doing with it. We have the U.S. attorney in Delaware investigating, calling a grand jury. We don't have any results of that. So it always raises the question, is there any sort of political interference in whether or not there ought to be a prosecution or not? There's evidence that gun laws have been violated. There's evidence of money laundering. And those things surely would be a legal matter. Whether or not the money received from the Chinese people is legal or not, I'll leave that up to the Justice Department, but it does raise questions about whether or not there's opportunities for the Chinese to use that against the United States.
All right, so, but as far as, all those things you want investigated, you haven't, for instance, been tipped off that anyone is doing anything dirty in the Justice Department, like deliberately not prosecuting. You don't have any information other than that these are certain things that you believe should be investigated.
Now I think you're bringing up almost a new thing, whereas I've been working on the Hunter Biden China thing since 2019. It's only been within the last few months that I've gotten information from whistleblowers that within the Justice Department, and this goes beyond Hunter Biden, this goes to more the broader issue of whether or not there's people in the Justice Department that are closing down cases that should be continued because of political influence, and then they're opening up cases with just fuzzy information. So I have sent enough information to the Justice Department to raise legitimate questions, and until we get those questions answered, I can't talk about it more. But there's evidence, for instance, in the case of Trump, where cases were opened up just on media reports by the liberal media, and a guy by the name of T-Bolt that was making these decisions of when to close down a case or when to open a case. He made a decision to open that case. And then there's some much stronger information about Hunter Biden, and they decided to close down that case. Now, this T-Bolt has a record of we got this through social media, that he's very much a liberal, very much ideologue and very partisan. And so I raised these questions with Ray about a month or two ago, and the guy has been reassigned. But when you have one person, and this probably involves a lot more people, but when you have one person that can close down a case because it's got a lot of evidence and maybe political connections, and the other one is a political enemy with fuzzy cases, this raises a question of power and party. And our investigations by the FBI should be above party and above personal power, and the credibility of the FBI is at stake here, and the people of the United States ought to have confidence that the FBI's work is being done without any political consideration whatsoever.
All right. We turn briefly to another topic. You and Senator Klobuchar have a bipartisan bill having to do with antitrust and big tech. When is there going to be a vote on it, and why has there not yet been a vote on that since it's bipartisan?
There's only one way I can answer your question, and this is, in a sense, discussions I have with Klobuchar, because she's a Democrat working with Schumer, who sets up the agenda for the United States Senate. We Republicans don't do that. And she says that he wants to bring it up. We've got the 60 votes to move the bill along, and it ought to be brought up instead of the Democrat caucus and Schumer spending their time on things that are going to be done in a partisan way, like Build Back Better, or things involving Medicare and things of that nature that are partisan, when we do things in a bipartisan way. And this is a bill that can do things in a partisan way. And what it's meant to do is to stop the discriminatory practices of some of our biggest platforms, because small business uses these platforms to sell their products, and these big platforms prioritize their own product over the smaller business person, and that isn't fair, and this would end that discrimination. It's a bill that's going to make the free marketplace work.
All right, well, what I don't get this is, though, this seems like an easy one to me, is that you've got Democrats on board, you got Republicans on board, including getting past the 60, and all you got to do is vote on it, and so it seems like an easy one, and you're not voting on it.
Yeah, it almost seems like they don't want to do easy things. And getting 60 votes in the United States Senate isn't easy. But when it's possible, you ought to be doing that instead of finagling around with strictly partisan things.
Senator, thank you very much for joining me, sir. Nice to talk to you.
Glad to be with you, Greta.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. I want to tell you about the Patriot Gold Group. But first, let me tell you that the S&P has already lost $8.2 trillion in 2022. Did you know that? Peak inflation is not even hit despite the Fed rate hikes on groceries, on gas. You know it as well as I do. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are warning of another 20% drop. Inflation is winning in a knockout right now. The Fed is going to raise rates again at the end of July. Meanwhile, Goldman, Wells Fargo, and Bloomberg are all forecasting gold to surpass all-time highs. If you want to invest in gold, call 888-936-2373 now. Call the Patriot Gold Group today and ask about their no-fee-for-life IRA. Sounds like a good deal, don't it? Here's the number, 888-936-2373. 888-936-2373 for the Patriot Gold Group.